The night Serena Vale married one of the most dangerous men in the city, she believed her life was finally beginning. 6 hours later, her husband handed her divorce papers and told her she'd been nothing but a mistake. Abandoned in a world where discarded women don't just disappear, they're erased. Serena had two choices: vanish into fear or become something no one expected. This is the story of a woman who refused to stay broken, who turned betrayal into power, and who rebuilt herself from the ruins of a marriage that was designed to destroy her. If you want to see how far her story reaches, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city below. Now, let's begin. The penthouse smelled like white roses and expensive lies. Serena Vale stood in the center of the master bedroom, still wearing the silk gown that had cost more than her childhood home, and tried to understand what her husband had just said. The words hung in the air between them like smoke from a gun she hadn't seen coming. "I want a divorce." Damien Voss didn't look at her when he spoke. He never really looked at her, Serena realized now with a sick clarity that made her stomach twist. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, his reflection dark against the lights below, his hands in the pockets of trousers he hadn't bothered to remove. The wedding had ended 4 hours ago. The guests had barely left. "I don't understand." Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Steadier, though. She could manage steady. "You don't need to understand." Damien turned then, and the coldness in his face was so complete it felt rehearsed. "You need to sign." He gestured to the marble console table near the door. A folder sat there, cream-colored and pristine, like it had been waiting, like someone had placed it there before the ceremony, before the vows, before she'd stood in a church and promised forever to a man who'd apparently been counting down the hours until he could take it all back. Serena's fingers went numb. "Damien, if this is about, it's not about anything." His tone was flat, businesslike, the same voice he used with subordinates who'd outlived their usefulness. "This was always temporary. I thought you understood that." "Temporary?" She repeated the word like it belonged to a language she was still learning. "We got married today." "We went through a ceremony today," he corrected. "There's a difference." The room tilted slightly. Serena pressed her palm against the silk wallpaper to steady herself, feeling the raised pattern beneath her skin, focusing on something solid because nothing else in this moment made sense. She'd known Damien Voss for 6 months. She'd agreed to marry him after 3. Everyone had told her she was lucky, that men like Damien didn't choose women like her, women with ordinary faces and unremarkable histories, women who waitressed at diners and split rent in apartments with broken heating. But he had chosen her. He'd walked into the restaurant where she worked, sat in her section, and returned every night for 2 weeks until she'd finally agreed to have dinner with him. He'd been quiet, controlled, careful with his words in a way that had felt like protection instead of withholding. He'd never lied to her about what he was. She'd known from the beginning that Damien Voss was feared, that his name carried weight in rooms she'd never be invited to, that his business existed in shadows the law couldn't reach. She hadn't cared, or maybe she'd cared and chosen him anyway, because for the first time in her life, someone powerful had wanted her. Now, standing in a bedroom she'd never sleep in, wearing a dress she'd never take off the way she'd imagined, Serena understood how profoundly stupid that had been. "Why did you marry me?" The question came out hollow. Damien sighed, the kind of exhale that suggested she was wasting his time. "It was strategic. I needed the appearance of stability. You were convenient." "Convenient. Yes." Something cracked inside her chest. Not her heart. She wasn't naive enough to believe her heart had ever really been involved in this. But something else. Some last fragile belief that the world might occasionally be kind, that people might sometimes mean what they said, that she might finally be someone worth keeping. "The papers are standard," Damien continued, as if they were discussing a business contract instead of the end of a marriage that hadn't lasted long enough for the flowers to wilt. "You'll receive a settlement. Enough to start over. I'm not cruel." Serena almost laughed. The sound died in her throat. "You'll stay in the secondary apartment for now," he went on. "Just until the paperwork is finalized. A week, maybe 2. Then you'll leave the city." "Leave the city?" She wasn't asking. She was just repeating his words back to him, trying to make them real. "It's better that way. Cleaner." Damien finally looked at her fully, and there was nothing in his eyes. No regret, no guilt, no flicker of the man who'd held her hand during the ceremony and made promises he'd never intended to keep. You don't belong in this world, Serena. You never did. I'm doing you a favor. The numbness spread from her fingers up through her arms, into her chest, settling somewhere behind her ribs where it felt like frost. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw something, to shatter the perfect calm of this perfect room with its perfect view and make him feel even a fraction of what she was feeling. But she didn't. Because screaming wouldn't change anything, and breaking things would only prove she was exactly what he thought she was: small, powerless, disposable. So instead, Serena walked to the console table, picked up the folder, and opened it. The divorce papers were immaculate, professionally prepared, dated 3 days before the wedding. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Legalese she didn't understand, clauses and stipulations that reduced their marriage to a transaction. A settlement amount that seemed enormous until she realized it was probably what Damien spent on a watch. At the bottom of the final page, his signature was already there, black ink on white paper, bold and finished. "There's a pen in the drawer," Damien said. Serena found it. Expensive, heavy, the kind of pen that cost more than her weekly paycheck used to. She held it over the signature line and felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. The dress, the day, the stupid hope she'd carried into this building like a girl in a fairy tale who hadn't read the ending. She signed. The pen made a soft scratch against paper. Her name looked small next to his. Good. Damien took the folder from her hands before she could close it. "Marcus will drive you to the apartment. Your things are already there." "My things? From your old place. I had them moved this afternoon." Of course he had. He'd planned this. Every piece of it. While she'd been getting ready for the wedding, while she'd been standing in a church believing she was starting a life, Damien had been efficiently dismantling the illusion. Serena looked at him one last time. She wanted to say something that would hurt him, something sharp enough to cut through that awful calm and make him bleed the way she was bleeding, but she couldn't think of anything. What did you say to a man who felt nothing? "I hope it was worth it," she managed finally. "Whatever you needed me for." Damien's expression didn't change. It was. The secondary apartment was on the east side, buried in a building that looked abandoned from the outside and wasn't much better inside. Marcus, Damien's driver, didn't speak during the ride. He didn't look at her in the rearview mirror. He just drove, parked, handed her a key, and left. Serena stood in the narrow hallway and stared at the door marked 4C, paint peeled near the handle. The number was crooked. This was protection, she understood now. Not the kind that kept you safe. The kind that kept you hidden until someone decided what to do with you. Inside, the apartment was small and impersonal. A studio with a kitchenette, a bathroom with a broken tile, a single window that overlooked a brick wall. Her belongings, what little she'd owned before Damien, were stacked in boxes near the far wall. Someone had been efficient. Nothing was unpacked. It was like she'd never existed anywhere else. Serena set her purse on the counter and caught sight of herself in the mirror, hanging above the sink. She looked like a ghost. Pale skin, dark hollows under her eyes. The wedding dress hanging off her frame like a costume she'd forgotten to remove. She reached back, found the zipper, and pulled. The silk slid off her shoulders and pooled at her feet in a whisper of fabric and broken promises. Underneath, she was just herself. Unremarkable, forgettable, convenient. She stepped out of the dress, left it on the floor, and walked to the window in her slip and bare feet. The city stretched beyond the brick wall, lights glittering in the distance like stars she couldn't reach. Somewhere out there, Damien was probably already moving on to whatever came next. Somewhere out there, people were living actual lives, working, loving, fighting, surviving. And here she was, hidden, waiting. For what? Serena pressed her forehead against the cold glass and finally let herself cry. Not because she loved Damien, she wasn't sure she ever had, but because she'd believed him. Because she'd let herself think that being chosen meant something. Because she'd walked into this willingly, eyes open, and it still hadn't been enough to save her. The tears came hard and silent, the kind that left her breathless and aching. She cried until there was nothing left, until her throat was raw and her eyes burned, and the sky outside began to shift from black to gray. When she was done, when the tears had dried and the sun was a pale line on the horizon, Serena pulled away from the window and looked at her reflection again. She looked like hell, ruined, wrecked, but still here. That had to count for something. The first 3 days were the worst. Serena didn't leave the apartment. She barely left the bed. She ordered food she didn't eat, stared at the ceiling, and tried to figure out what happened next. The settlement money would arrive once the divorce was finalized. Damien's lawyer had called to confirm the timeline. 2 weeks, maybe less. Then she was supposed to disappear, leave the city, start over. Doing what? Being who? She'd built her entire adult life around survival, working double shifts, scraping together rent, keeping her head down and her expectations low. She'd been good at it, invisible, competent, reliable. Then Damien had seen her, and for 6 months she'd let herself believe she could be something else, someone worth noticing, worth keeping. Now she was back to invisible, except worse, because now she knew what it felt like to be seen, and the absence of it was unbearable. On the 4th day, Serena forced herself out of bed, showered, and put on real clothes, jeans, a sweater, boots. She pulled her hair back, avoided looking at herself too closely, and stepped into the hallway. The building was quiet. She descended 3 flights of stairs and pushed through the heavy front door into cold morning air that smelled like rain and exhaust. The neighborhood was industrial, all warehouses and chain-link fences, the kind of place people passed through but didn't stay. Perfect for hiding. Serena walked without direction, hands in her pockets, trying to remember what it felt like to exist in the world as herself, instead of as someone's mistake. 2 blocks down, she found a bodega with barred windows and a flickering neon sign. Inside, it smelled like coffee, an old newsprint. She bought a cup, black, and sat on the curb outside to drink it. The coffee was terrible. She drank it anyway. "You're new." Serena looked up. A woman stood a few feet away, mid-40s maybe, wearing a leather jacket and an expression that suggested she'd seen worse things than a girl drinking bad coffee on a street corner. "Just passing through," Serena said. The woman smiled, sharp and knowing. "Nobody passes through this neighborhood, honey. You're here because someone put you here." Serena didn't answer. "Fair enough." The woman pulled a cigarette from her pocket, lit it, and exhaled smoke into the gray morning. "Word of advice, though. If you're planning to stay invisible, you're doing a decent job. But if you're planning to survive, you might want to start paying attention." "To what?" "To who's watching." A chill ran down Serena's spine. "Someone's watching me?" The woman shrugged. "Someone's always watching in this part of town. Question is whether they're watching because they're supposed to or because they're curious." She took another drag, studied Serena with eyes that didn't miss much. "You don't look like you belong here. That makes you interesting. Interesting gets people killed." "I'm nobody," Serena said quietly. "Then you'd better figure out how to be somebody." The woman dropped the cigarette, crushed it under her boot, and walked away without looking back. Serena sat there long after the woman disappeared, the coffee going cold in her hands, the words sinking in like stones. Interesting gets people killed. She thought about Damien's voice, flat and dismissive. "You don't belong in this world." Maybe he'd been right. But he'd also been wrong about one critical thing. She was already in this world. He'd dragged her into it, married her in front of people who would remember, and then tossed her aside like she didn't matter. But those people still knew her name. They still knew she'd been his wife, even if only for a few hours. That made her visible whether she wanted to be or not. And if she was visible, she was vulnerable. Serena stood, tossed the coffee cup in a nearby trash can, and walked back to the apartment with a new kind of clarity settling over her. She couldn't disappear. Damien's world didn't let people disappear. It erased them. The only way to survive was to become something other than a target. She just had to figure out how. The answer came 6 days later, in the form of a man she'd never met. Serena had started leaving the apartment every morning, walking the neighborhood, learning the rhythms of the streets. She mapped out which corners were safe, which alleys to avoid, which faces appeared too often to be coincidence. The woman from the bodega had been right. People were watching. Not obviously, but enough that Serena felt the weight of their attention like a hand on the back of her neck. She learned to move carefully, to blend, to notice without being noticed. It was a skill she hadn't known she possessed. On the sixth day, she was walking past a row of warehouses when she heard the sound. Sharp, sudden, wrong. A shout, then a crash, then the unmistakable crack of something breaking. Serena froze. Every instinct told her to turn around, to walk away, to keep her head down and pretend she hadn't heard anything. But something else, something newer, sharper, made her move toward the sound instead. She slipped between two buildings, staying close to the wall, and peered around the corner. Three men stood in a narrow loading area behind one of the warehouses. Two of them were large, broad-shouldered, the kind of men hired for their ability to hurt people. The third was leaner, older, wearing a suit that didn't belong in this part of town. He was on his knees, blood running from a cut above his eyebrow, hands raised in a placating gesture that wasn't working. "I told you," one of the large men said, his voice low and dangerous. "Mr. Voss doesn't negotiate." Serena's stomach dropped. Voss? "I'm not asking for negotiation," the man on the ground said, his voice steady despite the blood. "I'm asking for time." "Same thing." The second man pulled something from his jacket. Serena couldn't see what, but the movement was familiar enough that her pulse spiked. This was going to end badly, quickly. She should leave. This wasn't her business. These weren't her people. But the man on the ground wasn't begging. He wasn't crying or pleading or offering bribes. He was just calm. Like he'd already accepted what was coming and decided it didn't change who he was. Serena recognized that look. She'd seen it in her own reflection. Before she could talk herself out of it, she stepped into the alley. "Hey!" All three men turned. Serena kept her hands visible, her voice level. "Building security's doing rounds. You've got maybe 2 minutes before they get here." It was a complete lie. There was no security, but she said it with enough confidence that for a moment they believed her. The first man's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" "Nobody." Serena met his gaze without flinching. "But unless you want to explain to whoever you're working for why you got caught beating someone in broad daylight, you might want to move." For a long, terrible second, she thought they'd call her bluff. Then the second man swore, shoved his weapon back into his jacket, and jerked his head toward the street. "This isn't over," he said to the man on the ground. Then they were gone. Serena exhaled slowly, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. The man on the ground stood, touched the cut on his head, and studied her with an expression she couldn't read. "That was either very brave or very stupid," he said. "Probably stupid," Serena admitted. He smiled, faint and fleeting. "Thank you anyway." "You should clean that." She gestured to the cut. "I will." He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, pressed it to the wound, and kept his eyes on her. "You said you're nobody." "I don't believe you." "Believe what you want." "People who are nobody don't walk into situations like this." He tilted his head slightly, considering. "And they definitely don't lie convincingly enough to make armed men leave." Serena shrugged, already regretting her impulse. "I should go." "Wait." He lowered the handkerchief. The bleeding had slowed. "What's your name?" She hesitated. Giving her name felt dangerous, but so did walking away from the first person who'd looked at her in days like she might be worth something. "Serena." "Adrian Cross." He extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was firm, deliberate. "You said they work for Voss, Dad." "They do." "Then you should leave the city." Adrian's smile returned, sharper this time. "I don't run." "Then you should be more careful." "I could say the same to you." He released her hand but didn't step back. "Serena, if you ever need work, real work, not what you're doing now, come find me." "I'm not doing anything now." "Exactly." He pulled a card from his pocket and held it out. Plain white. A phone number embossed in black. Nothing else. "Think about it." Serena took the card, felt its weight, and slipped it into her pocket without looking at it. "What kind of work?" "The kind that requires intelligence, nerve, and the ability to lie without flinching." Adrian's eyes held hers. "You have all three." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner like he'd never been there at all. Serena stood alone in the alley, her pulse still racing, the card burning a hole in her pocket. She pulled it out, stared at the number, and for the first time since Damien had handed her divorce papers, she felt something other than fear. She felt possibility. Serena waited 3 days before calling the number. Not because she was uncertain, uncertainty had burned away the moment those men mentioned Damien's name, but because she needed to understand what she was walking into. Adrian Cross wasn't offering charity. Men like him didn't hand out business cards to strangers unless they saw an angle, and Serena had learned enough in the past 2 weeks to know that every offer came with a price. She spent those 3 days watching, learning. The neighborhood had rhythms she'd started to recognize: the morning deliveries to the warehouses, the shift changes at the factory 2 blocks east, the pattern of cars that circled the block at odd hours. She learned which faces belonged and which didn't. She memorized license plates, tracked movements, built a mental map of who controlled what. It was easier than she'd expected. Watching required patience, and she'd spent her entire life being patient, being invisible. Now she was turning that invisibility into something useful. On the 3rd day, she walked to the bodega, bought another terrible coffee, and used the payphone on the corner. The card was worn from being carried in her pocket, the edges soft. She dialed. Adrian answered on the second ring. Serena. Not a question, like he'd been expecting her call. How did you know it was me? Because nobody else has this number. A pause. Are you ready to work? I don't know what the work is. Smart. Meet me at Hendricks and 12th. There's a cafe called Marlowe's. 1 hour. The line went dead before she could respond. Serena hung up, finished her coffee, and walked back to the apartment to change. She chose carefully: dark jeans, a plain sweater, boots that wouldn't slow her down if she needed to run. She pulled her hair into a ponytail, checked her reflection, and saw someone who looked almost competent. Almost. It would have to be enough. Hendricks and 12th was outside her neighborhood, in a part of the city that still pretended to be legitimate. The cafe sat on a corner with large windows and exposed brick, the kind of place where people worked on laptops and ordered drinks with 3 different milks. Serena felt out of place the moment she walked in. Adrian sat at a table in the back, away from the windows. He'd cleaned up since the alley. The cut above his eyebrow was healing, reduced to a thin line that would probably scar. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. When he saw her, he stood. Thank you for coming. Serena sat across from him, folded her hands on the table. You said you had work. I do. Adrian gestured to the server, ordered 2 coffees without asking what she wanted, and waited until they were alone again. But first, I need to know something. The men in the alley, did you recognize them? No? But you knew they worked for Damien Voss. Her stomach tightened. They said his name. And you didn't run. Adrian leaned back, studied her with the same careful attention he'd shown in the alley. Most people hear that name and disappear. You stepped into the middle of it instead. Why? Serena considered lying, considered deflecting, but something in Adrian's expression told her he'd see through it, and she was tired of pretending to be something she wasn't. Because I'm already involved, she said. Whether I want to be or not. How? I was married to him. The words landed between them like a stone in still water. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, calculation, interest. Was, he repeated. 6 hours. That's how long the marriage lasted. Serena kept her voice level. He signed the papers before the wedding even happened. Why marry you at all? He needed the appearance of stability. I was convenient. Adrian was quiet for a moment. The server returned with their coffees, set them down, and left. He took a sip, never breaking eye contact. Damien Voss doesn't do anything without a reason, he said finally. If he married you, even for 6 hours, it meant something. The question is what? Does it matter? It might. Adrian set his cup down. He divorced you, but he kept you in the city, in a building he controls. That's not kindness, Serena. That's insurance. Against what? I don't know yet. He tilted his head slightly. But I intend to find out, and if you're willing, I'd like your help. Serena's pulse quickened. Why would you want my help? You don't know me. I know you're smart enough to talk your way out of a dangerous situation. I know you're observant enough to notice details most people miss, and I know you have access to a world I can't reach on my own. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Damien Voss is expanding his operations into territories that don't belong to him. People are getting hurt. I need someone who can move through his circles without raising suspicion. I'm not in his circles. He threw me out. Exactly. You're damaged goods. Forgotten. Nobody pays attention to the discarded wife. Adrian leaned forward slightly. That makes you the perfect observer. The words stung, but only because they were true. Serena took a drink of her coffee to buy herself time. It was better than the bodegas. Not by much. What would I have to do? Watch, listen, report back. Nothing that would put you in immediate danger. He paused. I won't lie to you. There's risk. If Damien finds out you're working for me, he'll see it as betrayal. But you're already at risk. At least this way you'd be doing something about it. And what do I get? Money. Protection. A chance to become something other than a woman waiting to be erased. Adrian's voice was steady, certain. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise you won't be invisible anymore. Serena looked at him across the table. This man she'd met once, in an alley, while stopping something she didn't fully understand. He could be lying. This could be another setup, another way for powerful men to use her until she stopped being useful. But he'd also said thank you when she'd saved him. And he was offering her a choice instead of telling her what to do. That was more than Damien had ever given her. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Adrian smiled, genuine this time. Good. We start tomorrow. He slid a phone across the table. Small, basic, the kind you could throw away if needed. My number's programmed. Don't use it unless absolutely necessary. Don't bring it into any building Damien controls. If you're compromised, destroy it. He stood, buttoned his jacket. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., there's a charity event at the Whitmore Gallery. Damien will be there. So will you. I wasn't invited. You don't need an invitation. You're his wife. Ex-wife. Almost. The divorce isn't finalized yet. Legally, you're still Serena Voss. Adrian's expression was unreadable. Use it. He left cash on the table for the coffee and walked out without looking back. Serena sat alone, the phone cold and heavy in her hand, and wondered what exactly she'd just agreed to. The Whitmore Gallery sat in the center of the city, like a monument to money that didn't know where else to go. Serena stood across the street the next morning, watching well-dressed people filter through the entrance, and felt the weight of her decision settling into her bones. She'd borrowed a dress from a thrift store, black, simple, nothing that would draw attention. She'd done her makeup carefully, not too much, just enough to look like she belonged. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders in a way that felt vulnerable. She hated it. But Adrian was right. She was still legally Serena Voss. And people in Damien's world wouldn't question her presence as long as she acted like she had a right to be there. She crossed the street, climbed the stone steps, and walked through the entrance like she owned the place. Inside, the gallery was all white marble and soaring ceilings, the kind of space designed to make art look important and people look small. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Clusters of guests stood admiring paintings that probably cost more than Serena would earn in a lifetime. Classical music played from hidden speakers, just loud enough to create atmosphere without demanding attention. Serena took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and moved through the crowd, scanning faces. She didn't see Damien yet. Good. That gave her time to orient herself, to figure out who else was here and why. She'd made it halfway across the room when she felt it. That prickling awareness of being watched. She turned slowly, casually, and found a woman staring at her from near the far wall. The woman was striking, late 30s, wearing a crimson dress that fit like armor, dark hair pulled back so severely it looked painful. Her expression was careful, controlled, the kind of face that revealed nothing while cataloging everything. Serena held her gaze for a beat too long, then looked away. Mistake. The woman crossed the room with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested she was used to getting what she wanted. She stopped directly in front of Serena, close enough that it felt like a challenge. "You're her," the woman said. Not a question. "Excuse me?" Damien's mistake. The woman's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "I heard you were hidden away somewhere. Guess you got bored." Serena took a sip of champagne to keep her hand steady. "I don't know who you think I am. Serena Voss. Married for 6 hours, discarded before dawn, currently residing in one of Damien's less desirable properties while he figures out what to do with you. The woman tilted her head. Did I miss anything? Heat crawled up Serena's neck. Who are you? Vivian Drake. I handle Damien's external relations. Vivian's smile widened, which means I know exactly who you are, why you're here, and how long you have before someone asks you to leave. I'm not doing anything wrong. You're existing. In Damien's world, that's enough. Vivian glanced past Serena's shoulder, her expression shifting subtly. Speaking of which, Serena turned. Damien stood near the entrance, surrounded by men in expensive suits. He looked exactly as he had on their wedding night, controlled, untouchable, completely at ease in his power. He was talking to someone, gesturing slightly, his face showing polite interest in whatever was being said. Then his gaze swept the room and landed on Serena. For a moment, nothing. His expression didn't change. He didn't react. He just looked at her with the same distant attention he might give a piece of furniture that had been moved without his permission. Then he turned back to his conversation like she didn't exist. The dismissal was so complete, so absolute that it felt physical. Vivian laughed softly. That's your cue to disappear. I'm not leaving. Then you're stupider than I thought. Vivian leaned in slightly, lowered her voice. Damien doesn't like surprises. And you showing up here, uninvited, using a name you have no right to? That's a surprise. The kind that gets people hurt. He divorced me. He doesn't get to control where I go. He divorced you. He didn't release you. Vivian's eyes glittered with something that might have been pity or might have been amusement. There's a difference. Learn it. Fast. She walked away before Serena could respond, her red dress cutting through the crowd like a warning. Serena stood frozen, her champagne glass slick with condensation against her palm. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to get out before Damien decided to acknowledge her existence in a way that would end badly. But Adrian's voice echoed in her head. Watch, listen, report back, and she forced herself to stay. She moved to the edge of the room, positioned herself near a painting she didn't look at, and observed. Damien worked the crowd with practiced ease. He shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, smiled at jokes that probably weren't funny. But beneath the surface performance, Serena noticed something else. The men surrounding him weren't equals. They were subordinates. And they were nervous. She caught fragments of conversation as people passed, mentions of territories, shipments, someone named Castellano who was causing problems. Nothing concrete, but enough to understand that Damien's world was shifting and not in his favor. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Serena was starting to think she could slip out unnoticed when a hand closed around her elbow. We need to talk. Damien's voice, low, controlled, furious. Serena turned. He stood too close, his grip on her arm just tight enough to hurt without leaving marks. His expression was still carefully neutral, but his eyes were cold. Let go of me, she said quietly. Not here. He steered her toward a side corridor, away from the crowd, into a section of the gallery that was closed for renovation. The sounds of the event faded behind them. He released her arm, stepped back, and studied her like she was a problem he was trying to solve. What are you doing here? Attending an event. You weren't invited. I'm your wife. I don't need an invitation. Damien's jaw tightened. You're not my wife. You're a mistake I'm in the process of correcting. The paperwork isn't finalized yet. Legally, I'm still Serena Voss. She kept her voice level, even though her heart was hammering. Which means I have every right to be here. You have no rights. He moved closer, looming, using his height to intimidate. I allowed you to exist in this city as a courtesy. That courtesy ends the moment you become a problem. I'm not a problem. I'm just a woman at a gallery. You're a complication I don't need. Damien's voice dropped to something dangerous. I don't know what you think you're doing, Serena, but whatever it is, stop. Go back to the apartment. Stay there. Stay quiet. And maybe you'll leave this city intact. She should have been terrified. She was terrified. But beneath the fear was something harder, sharper, something that refused to back down. Or what? She asked. You'll make me disappear, like all the other complications you don't need? Damien's eyes narrowed. Be careful. Why? You already threw me away. What else can you do to me? For a moment, she thought he might actually answer. Then his expression smoothed over, becoming that careful mask she recognized from their wedding night. You're right, he said. I did throw you away, which means you're no longer my responsibility. If something happens to you, it's not my problem. He turned and walked back toward the main gallery, leaving her alone in the empty corridor. Serena leaned against the wall, her legs suddenly unsteady. Her arm ached where he'd grabbed her. Her pulse was too fast. But she'd done it. She'd stood in front of Damien Voss and refused to disappear. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. She waited until her breathing steadied, then made her way to the exit. Outside, the air was cold and sharp, clearing her head. She walked 3 blocks before pulling out the phone Adrian had given her and sending a single message. Done. Need to meet. The response came immediately. Tomorrow, same place, noon. Serena deleted the messages, pocketed the phone, and headed back to the apartment. Her mind was already cataloging everything she'd seen. The nervous subordinates, the fragments of conversation, the tension beneath Damien's controlled surface. Adrian had asked her to watch and listen. She'd done both. And she was starting to understand that Damien's power wasn't as solid as it appeared. Adrian was already at the cafe when Serena arrived the next day. He had the same table in the back, the same careful positioning that kept his face away from the windows. He stood when she approached, gestured for her to sit, and waited until she was settled before speaking. How did it go? Serena told him everything. The gallery, Vivian Drake, the fragments of conversation she'd overheard, Damien's warning. Adrian listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Vivian Drake, he said finally. What was your read on her? Dangerous, loyal to Damien. She knew exactly who I was before I said a word. That's because Vivian handles intelligence. She's the one who makes sure Damien knows everything that happens in his territory before it happens. Adrian leaned back. If she knew you were there, Damien knew you were there before you even walked in. Serena's stomach dropped. Then why did he act surprised? Because he wanted to see what you'd do, how you'd react. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Serena, Damien doesn't make mistakes. He divorced you for a reason, but he's keeping you close for another reason. We need to figure out what that is. Maybe there is no reason. Maybe I'm just not worth the effort of erasing. You don't believe that. He was right, she didn't, because if Damien really thought she was worthless, she'd already be gone. There's something else, Adrian continued. You mentioned Castellano. That's Vincent Castellano. He controls the North District. He and Damien have been at odds for months over territory rights. If Damien's people are nervous, it means the situation is escalating. What does that have to do with me? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Adrian pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward her. This is from 3 weeks ago, Damien's engagement announcement. Serena stared at the image. It showed Damien standing next to a woman she didn't recognize. Beautiful, poised, wearing a diamond ring that caught the light. The headline read, Voss to wed Castellano's daughter in historic alliance. The date of the article was 2 days before Damien had proposed to Serena. Her blood went cold. He was engaged. He was supposed to marry Elena Castellano. Unite the territories, end the conflict, create a partnership that would have made both families untouchable. Adrian took the phone back. Then he married you instead. The engagement fell apart. The alliance collapsed. And Vincent Castellano has been trying to destroy Damien ever since. Serena felt like she'd been punched. I was the reason. You were the weapon. Damien used you to sabotage his own engagement. Adrian's voice was gentle, but his words were brutal. The question is why? Maybe he didn't want the alliance. Then why propose in the first place? Why go through the motions, agree to the terms, let both families invest in the partnership? Adrian shook his head. Damien's not impulsive. He planned this, all of it. Including divorcing me 6 hours later. Especially that. Serena sat back, her mind racing. She'd thought Damien had married her because she was convenient, forgettable, easy to discard. But if Adrian was right, she'd been part of something bigger, a strategy she didn't understand. What do you need me to do? She asked. Keep watching. Keep listening. If Damien's in trouble with Castellano, his people will know, and if they know, you can find out. Adrian hesitated. But Serena, you need to be careful. If Damien realizes you're gathering information, he won't just send you away. He'll make sure you can't talk. I understand. Do you? Adrian's gaze held hers. Because once you cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be in this world for real. Not as someone's wife or someone's mistake. As a player. Serena thought about the apartment with its peeling paint and broken tile. She thought about Damien's cold dismissal, Vivian's warning, the feeling of being erased while still breathing. I'm already in this world, she said. I just didn't know it. Adrian nodded slowly. Then let's make sure you survive it. Over the next 2 weeks, Serena learned how to be invisible in a way that mattered. She attended events, always on the periphery, always using the name she technically still had the right to use. She listened to conversations, memorized faces, tracked who talked to whom and when. She learned that Damien's organization was fracturing, slowly but inevitably, under pressure from Castellano's increasing aggression. She also learned that people underestimated her in exactly the way Adrian had predicted. The discarded wife. The mistake. Nobody paid attention to what she heard or where she went because they assumed she didn't matter. That assumption became her greatest asset. She fed information to Adrian carefully, names, locations, details about shipments and territories. He never asked how she got it, and she never offered. Their meetings were brief, clinical, focused entirely on the work. But slowly, Serena realized she was good at this. Better than she'd expected. The skills she'd developed surviving in the shadows of her old life translated perfectly to surviving in Damien's world. She knew how to watch without being seen, how to listen without drawing attention, how to remember details other people forgot. She was becoming exactly what Adrian had said she could be, something other than invisible. The shift happened on a Tuesday, in a restaurant she shouldn't have been near. Serena had tracked one of Damien's lieutenants, a man named Marcus, who handled logistics, to an upscale steakhouse in the financial district. She'd positioned herself at the bar with a clear view of his table, nursing a drink she wouldn't finish, pretending to wait for someone who would never arrive. Marcus was meeting with 2 men she didn't recognize. The conversation was tense, their voices low but urgent. Serena caught fragments, something about a delayed shipment, a compromised route, Castellano's people moving in on territory that was supposed to be neutral. Then Marcus said something that made both men go still. Voss doesn't know yet, and he can't. Not until we've contained it. Serena's pulse spiked. She pulled out her phone, pretended to text, and recorded every word she could catch. She was so focused on the conversation that she didn't notice the person approaching until they were right beside her. Serena Voss, didn't expect to see you here. She looked up. Vivian Drake stood next to her, wearing another severe dress, this one black. Her expression was knowing, amused, dangerous. Just having a drink, Serena said evenly. Alone? My date's late. Liar. Vivian signaled the bartender, ordered something expensive, and turned to face Serena fully. You've been busy lately, showing up at places you don't belong, talking to people who shouldn't give you the time of day. Her smile was razor sharp. What are you playing at? I'm not playing at anything. Then you're working for someone, and I'd very much like to know who. Serena met her gaze without flinching. I don't work for anyone. I'm just trying to survive. By inserting yourself into Damien's business, that's not survival, that's suicide. Vivian's drink arrived. She took a sip, never breaking eye contact. Let me give you some advice. Whatever you think you're doing, stop. Walk away. Leave the city like you were supposed to, because if Damien finds out you're spying on him, he'll kill you, and I won't stop him. Why are you warning me? Because I don't like waste. Vivian set her glass down. You had a chance to disappear. You should have taken it. She walked away, leaving Serena alone at the bar with her heart pounding and the weight of the recording in her pocket. That night, Serena met Adrian in a different location, a parking garage, late, where nobody would see them. She handed him the phone with the recording, watched him listen, saw his expression darken. This is bigger than I thought, he said. If Damien's people are hiding problems from him, it means they don't trust him to handle it. His organization is falling apart from the inside. Vivian knows I'm working for someone, Adrian's head snapped up. What did you tell her? Nothing, but she's watching me now. Really watching. Then we need to move faster. Adrian pocketed the phone. There's a meeting in 3 days, Damien and his inner circle. If Castellano is planning something, that's where we'll hear about it. How do I get into that meeting? You don't, but you can get close enough to listen. He pulled out a small device, a bug, sophisticated and nearly invisible. Plant this in Damien's office. I'll handle the rest. Serena took the device, felt its weight in her palm. This was different from watching, from listening to conversations in public places. This was active espionage. This was crossing a line she couldn't uncross. If I get caught, you won't, Adrian said, but his eyes said something else. If you get caught, I can't save you. Serena nodded, pocketed the device, and walked to her car with the certain knowledge that she was about to do something that would either make her indispensable or get her killed. She had 48 hours to figure out which. The offices were on the 40th floor of a building that had Damien's name on the deed, but someone else's on the door. Corporate shell games, the kind of laundering that turned blood money into quarterly dividends. Serena had never been there before. Damien had kept that part of his life separate from the brief fiction of their marriage. But she'd done her research. Security rotated shifts at 11 p.m. The cleaning crew came through at midnight. There was a 30-minute window where the executive floor would be mostly empty except for whoever pulled night duty at the reception desk. She had 27 minutes to get in, plant the bug, and get out. Serena stood in the lobby at 11:43 p.m. wearing dark clothes that wouldn't catch light, her hair tied back, the device Adrian had given her burning a hole in her jacket pocket. The security guard at the front desk barely looked up when she approached. Help you? Serena Voss. I left some documents in my husband's office earlier. Just need to grab them real quick. The guard's expression shifted. Recognition, uncertainty. The calculation of someone trying to figure out if stopping her was worth the trouble. Damien's name still carried weight. Even the discarded wife got some reflected benefit. ID. She handed over her driver's license. Still had her married name on it. The guard checked it against something on his computer, frowned slightly, then shrugged and waved her through. Elevators are to your right, floor 40. Serena nodded, walked to the elevators with her heart trying to climb out of her chest, and pressed the button. The doors opened immediately. She stepped inside, pressed 40, and watched the numbers climb. 38 floors to talk herself out of this. She didn't. The doors opened onto a reception area that looked like it cost more than most people's houses. Marble floors, leather furniture, abstract art that probably had meaning she'd never understand. The receptionist's desk was empty, shift change like she'd expected, but there was a camera in the corner. Serena kept her head down, walked with purpose, and headed toward the corridor she'd memorized from building schematics Adrian had somehow acquired. Damien's office was at the end of the hall. The door was closed but not locked. She slipped inside, shut it behind her, and allowed herself 3 seconds to panic. The office was exactly what she'd expected. Massive desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that whispered power and money. Everything was immaculate, ordered, controlled, just like Damien. Serena pulled out the bug, studied it in the dim light filtering through the windows. It was small enough to hide anywhere, sophisticated enough that Adrian had assured her it wouldn't be detected by standard sweeps. She just needed to place it somewhere Damien would talk, somewhere central, somewhere he'd feel comfortable enough to say things he wouldn't say elsewhere. Her eyes landed on the desk. Too obvious. The bookshelf behind it? Maybe. Then she saw it. A small sculpture on the credenza near the window, abstract metal twisted into shapes that meant nothing to her. Decorative, permanent, exactly the kind of thing nobody would move or examine closely. She crossed to it, hands shaking, and carefully affixed the bug to the underside of the base. It clicked into place, nearly invisible against the dark metal. She stepped back, checked from multiple angles. Perfect. That's when she heard voices in the corridor. Serena's blood went cold. The voices were getting closer, accompanied by footsteps that sounded expensive and unhurried. She looked around frantically. No other exit. Nowhere to hide except behind the desk or in the closet near the far wall. She chose the closet, slipped inside, and pulled the door almost closed, leaving just enough gap to see through. The office door opened. Damien walked in, followed by 2 men Serena recognized from the gallery. Marcus, the logistics man, and someone older, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her settlement. They were deep in conversation, their voices tense. "Can't keep covering for him," the silver-haired man was saying. "Vincent knows about the shipment. He knows we rerouted it. If he moves on the warehouse before we can relocate, he won't." Damien cut him off. His voice was sharp, controlled, but there was an edge beneath it Serena had never heard before. "Vincent's smart enough to know that hitting us directly starts a war he can't win." "Can't he?" Marcus sounded uncertain. "Damien, we've lost 3 territories in 2 months. Our people are nervous. They're starting to wonder if maybe an alliance with Castellano wouldn't be the worst." "There will be no alliance." Damien's tone left no room for argument. "Not with Vincent. Not with anyone." "Then what's the play?" the silver-haired man asked. "Because right now we're bleeding resources and reputation. The other families are watching. If they sense weakness, they sense what I want them to sense." Damien moved to the windows, stared out at the city. "Vincent thinks he's winning because I let him think that. The territories we've lost? They were leverage. The shipments he's intercepted? Bait. I'm drawing him out, making him confident, making him sloppy. And when he's sloppy, then I destroy him." Damien turned back to face them. "But I need time, 3 weeks, maybe 4. Can you hold the organization together that long?" Marcus and the silver-haired man exchanged looks. Neither seemed convinced. "The men need something," Marcus said carefully. "Morale is low. They need to see you in control. They need to believe you have a plan beyond letting Vincent take pieces off the board. Then give them a win. Small, clean, something that reminds them who they work for." Damien's expression was unreadable. "But nothing that compromises the larger strategy. Vincent can't know what we're planning." "What are we planning?" "I'll let you know when you need to know." The room went quiet. Serena pressed herself deeper into the closet, barely breathing, her pulse so loud she was certain they could hear it. "There's something else," the silver-haired man said after a moment. "Vivian reported that your ex-wife has been showing up at events, asking questions, getting close to people she shouldn't be close to." Serena's stomach dropped. Damien was silent for a beat too long. And Vivian thinks she might be working for someone, gathering intelligence. Serena's not smart enough for intelligence work. Damien's dismissal was casual, complete. "She's a waitress playing dress-up. Let her ask questions. Nobody's going to tell her anything that matters." "You sure about that?" "I'm sure she's not a threat." Damien moved toward the door. "But if it makes Vivian feel better, have someone keep an eye on her. Low priority. Don't waste resources on it." The 3 of them filed out, still talking, their voices fading down the corridor. Serena waited until she couldn't hear them anymore, counted to 60, then carefully pushed the closet door open. The office was empty. She crossed to the door, checked the hallway, clear, and slipped out. Her legs felt like water. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She made it to the elevator, pressed the button, and forced herself to breathe normally while the numbers descended. Lobby. Security guard barely looked up as she walked past. Outside, the night air hit her like a slap, cold and sharp and real. Serena made it 2 blocks before she had to stop, lean against a building, and let the adrenaline work its way through her system. She'd done it. She'd planted the bug. She'd heard things Adrian needed to hear, but Damien's words kept circling through her mind. Serena's not smart enough for intelligence work. The worst part was that a month ago, he would have been right. She pulled out the burner phone, sent Adrian a message that said "only done," and started the long walk back to her apartment. Sleep wouldn't come tonight. But that was fine. She had work to do. Adrian met her the next morning at a different cafe, this one on the outskirts of the city where nobody from Damien's world would think to look. He was already reviewing the audio when Serena arrived, earbuds in, his expression focused. He gestured for her to sit, held up one finger, "Give me a minute," and kept listening. Serena ordered coffee she didn't want and waited. Finally, Adrian pulled out the earbuds and looked at her with something that might have been respect. "This is good," he said. "Better than good. If Damien's planning to destroy Castellano, we need to know how and when." He didn't say how, just that he was baiting him. That's enough to start with. Adrian pulled out a tablet, made notes. The territories Damien's lost. If they're intentional sacrifices, that changes everything. It means he's playing a longer game than anyone realizes. Can you use it? I can give it to people who need to know Damien's not as weak as he appears. Adrian looked up. Which means those people will start repositioning, changing strategies, and Damien will notice. Will he know it came from me? Not directly. But Serena, you need to understand something. Adrian set the tablet aside, his expression serious. You're in the middle of a power struggle between two of the most dangerous men in this city. Damien thinks you're harmless. Vincent Castellano doesn't know you exist. But the moment either of them realizes you're feeding information to their enemies, you become a target. I know. Do you? Because there's knowing intellectually and there's understanding what it actually means. He leaned forward. I can offer you some protection, resources, places to go if things get bad. But I can't shield you completely. If this goes wrong, you're exposed. Serena met his gaze. It's already wrong. Damien married me to sabotage an alliance, divorced me to cover his tracks, and left me in a building he controls so he could decide later whether I was worth erasing. I've been exposed since the beginning. At least now I'm doing something about it. Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, then we keep going. But carefully. Damien's not stupid even if he thinks you are. One mistake and this ends badly. What do you need me to do? Keep listening. The bug's active. We'll hear everything that happens in that office. But I also need you to get closer to Vivian Drake. Serena's stomach tightened. She already suspects me. Which means she's watching you. And if she's watching you, she might slip, tell you something she shouldn't, give you access to something useful. Adrian pulled up a photo on his tablet. Vivian, standing next to Damien at some formal event, looking severe and competent. Vivian's been with Damien for 8 years. She knows where the bodies are buried. Literally. If we can get her to trust you, even slightly, we can learn things the bug won't pick up. How do I get her to trust me? She thinks I'm playing at something I don't understand. Then prove you do understand. Show her you're not just Damien's discarded wife. Show her you're something else. Adrian's gaze was steady. You've survived 3 weeks in a world that was supposed to erase you. That takes skill. Use it. Serena wanted to argue, to say that approaching Vivian was suicide, that the woman had already warned her to disappear. But Adrian was right. Vivian was a weakness in Damien's armor, someone who knew too much and controlled too much information. If Serena could find a way in, the payoff would be worth the risk. I'll try, she said. Don't try. Do it. Adrian stood, left cash on the table. And Serena? Be careful. Vivian Drake doesn't give second chances. He left before she could respond. Serena sat alone with her coffee, her mind already working through angles and approaches, and wondered when exactly she'd stopped being afraid and started being something else. Finding Vivian turned out to be easier than expected. The woman had patterns, routines that Serena had started to notice during her weeks of observation. Every Thursday afternoon, Vivian went to the same upscale gym in the financial district. She worked out for exactly 90 minutes, then grabbed a green juice from the cafe next door. Serena showed up at the cafe on Thursday at 4:47 p.m. and waited. Vivian arrived at 4:52, wearing expensive athletic wear and an expression that suggested the workout hadn't improved her mood. She ordered her usual juice, paid, and turned to find Serena sitting at a corner table. Recognition flashed across Vivian's face, followed by irritation. Are you following me? No, I'm having a drink. Serena gestured to the chair across from her. But since you're here, maybe we could talk. We have nothing to talk about. I think we do. Serena kept her voice calm, measured. You warned me to disappear. I didn't. And you're still watching me, which means you're curious about why. Vivian's eyes narrowed. I watch potential problems. You're a potential problem. Then let me stop being one. Serena leaned forward slightly. I'm not working against Damien. I'm not trying to sabotage anything. I'm just trying to understand what happened to me and why. You know what happened. Damien used you. He's done with you. Accept it and move on. I'm trying to. But people keep telling me I'm in danger, that I need to leave, that I'm a complication that needs to be managed. Serena held Vivian's gaze. If I'm really that harmless, why does everyone care what I do? Vivian was quiet for a moment, studying Serena with the same careful attention she probably gave everything. Then she sat down, took a sip of her juice, and set it on the table with deliberate precision. You want the truth? Yes. Fine, you're not harmless. You're a loose end. Damien doesn't like loose ends. Vivian tilted her head. He married you to destroy an alliance with Vincent Castellano. He divorced you to cut ties before Vincent could use you against him. But you're still out there, still connected to Damien's name, still capable of saying or doing something that complicates an already complicated situation. So what's he waiting for? Why not just make me disappear? Because killing you creates more problems than it solves. You're nobody, Serena. But if you turn up dead, people ask questions. Vincent asks questions. And the last thing Damien needs right now is more attention. Vivian's expression was hard. So instead, he's keeping you close enough to monitor and far enough away to be deniable. It's efficient. And if I refuse to stay in that box, then you stop being efficient, and Damien deals with inefficiency permanently. Vivian leaned back. Is that clear enough for you? Serena felt the words settle into her bones, cold and certain. But beneath the fear was something else, clarity. She finally understood the game. Damien wasn't keeping her alive out of kindness. He was keeping her alive because it was convenient. The moment it wasn't, she'd be gone, unless she made herself indispensable. I understand, Serena said quietly. Thank you for being honest. Vivian seemed surprised by that. You're thanking me for telling you you're disposable? I'm thanking you for giving me the information I need to survive. Something flickered in Vivian's expression. Not quite respect, but close. You're smarter than Damien thinks you are. Most people are. A hint of a smile crossed Vivian's face, there and gone. Maybe, but smart doesn't always mean useful. What exactly are you planning to do with all this understanding you're collecting? I don't know yet. Serena held her gaze. But I'm tired of being someone else's problem. I want to be my own person. And that means figuring out how to exist in this world without needing Damien's permission. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then she finished her juice, stood, and looked down at Serena with an expression that was almost thoughtful. If you survive the next month, she said, call me. I might have work for someone with your particular skill set. She dropped a business card on the table, simple, elegant, just a name and phone number, and walked out. Serena stared at the card, her heart pounding. She'd just been offered a lifeline by the woman who was supposed to be watching her for Damien. It could be a trap. It probably was a trap, but it was also an opportunity. She pocketed the card and left the cafe with a plan forming in her mind. The bug in Damien's office continued to provide information over the next week. Serena listened to the recordings Adrian shared, heard meetings and conversations that painted a picture of an organization under pressure. Damien was still in control, but barely. His people were nervous, questioning his decisions, wondering if maybe Vincent Castellano wasn't the enemy Damien claimed he was. And through it all, Damien remained calm, controlled, playing a game only he seemed to understand. Serena fed the information to Adrian, who fed it to whoever needed to know. The ripple effects started to show. Alliances shifted. Territories changed hands. People who'd been loyal to Damien started hedging their bets. The city's underworld was recalibrating, and Serena was part of the reason why. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Then, on a cold morning 2 weeks after she'd planted the bug, everything changed. Serena was in her apartment reviewing notes from the latest recording when her burner phone rang, Adrian calling instead of texting. That was new. We have a problem, he said without preamble. What kind of problem? Vincent Castellano wants to meet you. Serena's blood went cold. What? Why? Because he knows you exist. He knows you were married to Damien, and he thinks you might have information he can use. Adrian's voice was tight. Serena, this is exactly what I was afraid of. You're visible now, and Vincent's not someone you can hide from. What does he want? To talk. That's all he said. But with Vincent, talking is never just talking. A pause. You don't have to do this. I can find a way to get you out of the city, set you up somewhere safe. No. The word came out firmer than she expected. If Vincent wants to meet, I'll meet him. Maybe I can use this. Use it how? I don't know yet, but running won't solve anything. It'll just confirm I'm worth hunting. Serena took a breath. Where and when? Adrian was quiet for a moment, then, Tomorrow, noon. There's a restaurant called Giordano's in the North District. Vincent owns it. He'll have security, but he's promised you safe passage. And you believe him? I believe he's curious. Curiosity buys you one conversation. What happens after that depends on what you say. Adrian's voice softened slightly. Serena, if you do this, you're stepping into the deep end. Vincent Castellano is not Damien. He's older, smarter, more dangerous. He'll see through any lie you try to tell. Then I won't lie. What will you do? I'll tell him the truth. Serena looked at her reflection in the window, thin, tired, but still standing, or at least enough of it to stay alive. The line went quiet. Then Adrian said, I'll be nearby. If anything goes wrong, call me. I'll get you out. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This might be the worst decision you've ever made. He hung up. Serena sat in the silence of her apartment, the phone heavy in her hand, and tried to imagine what Vincent Castellano would look like. Damien had destroyed an alliance to avoid marrying Vincent's daughter. That kind of insult didn't fade. It festered. And now Vincent wanted to meet the woman who'd been the weapon. Serena should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something close to relief. Finally, she was going to get some answers. Giordano's sat on a corner in the North District, all red brick and green awnings, the kind of place that had been there for decades and would be there for decades more. Serena arrived at 11:55, 5 minutes early, and stood outside gathering her courage. Through the window, she could see the restaurant was empty, except for a handful of men in dark suits positioned strategically throughout the room. Security. And at a table in the back, facing the door, sat a man who could only be Vincent Castellano. He was older than she'd expected, mid-60s maybe, with silver hair and a face that had seen enough violence to be comfortable with it. He wore a dark suit, perfectly tailored, and his hands were folded on the table in front of him like he was waiting for a business meeting instead of a conversation with his enemy's discarded wife. Serena pushed open the door. The men in suits turned to look at her, their expressions neutral but watchful. Nobody moved to stop her. She walked through the empty restaurant, her footsteps loud on the tile floor, and stopped in front of Vincent's table. Mr. Castellano. Serena Voss. His voice was deep, measured, with an accent that suggested he'd come from somewhere else a long time ago. Sit, please. She sat, her hands in her lap, her pulse steady despite everything. Vincent studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he gestured to one of the men, who brought over a tray with espresso and small pastries. You'll forgive the informality, Vincent said, but I find these conversations go better with coffee. I'm not here for coffee. No. You're here because I asked you to be here, and you were smart enough to understand that refusing would be unwise. Vincent poured 2 espressos, slid one across the table. Do you know who I am? Yes. Then you know that my daughter was supposed to marry Damien Voss, that our families were supposed to unite, create something stronger than either of us could build alone. Vincent's eyes were cold, calculating. Do you know why that didn't happen? Because Damien married me instead. Exactly. Vincent took a sip of his espresso. 6 hours. That's how long your marriage lasted. Just long enough to destroy an alliance that took 2 years to negotiate. Just long enough to humiliate my family in front of everyone who matters. Serena said nothing. I've been trying to understand why, Vincent continued, why Damien would sabotage something that benefited him as much as it benefited me. Why he would choose a waitress over my daughter. Why he would risk everything for a marriage he never intended to keep. He leaned forward slightly. And then I realized it wasn't about you. You were just the tool he used. The question is why he needed that particular tool. I don't know. I think you do. Or at least you know more than you're saying. Vincent's gaze was sharp, penetrating. You've been asking questions, Serena, attending events, getting close to Damien's people. That's not the behavior of a woman who's been discarded. That's the behavior of someone looking for leverage. Serena's throat was dry. She took a sip of the espresso to buy time. It was perfect, rich, strong, exactly what she needed. I'm trying to understand what happened to me, she said carefully. That's all. That's all? Vincent smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Let me tell you what I think is happening. I think Damien underestimated you. I think he believed you'd disappear quietly, accept your settlement, and fade into obscurity. But instead, you've been building something, learning, becoming someone he didn't expect. He tilted his head. Am I wrong? I don't know what I'm becoming. Then let me help you figure it out. Vincent set his cup down with careful precision. I'm going to destroy Damien Voss. Not quickly. He doesn't deserve quick. Slowly, methodically, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of the empire he's built. His voice was calm, conversational, like he was discussing the weather. You can help me do that, and in return I'll give you something Damien never did. What's that? A choice. Vincent leaned back. Work with me. Tell me what you know about Damien's operations, his weaknesses, his plans. Help me dismantle him. And when it's over, you'll have resources, protection, a place in an organization that values intelligence over accidents of birth. And if I refuse, then you continue to be Damien's problem, and eventually he'll solve you. Vincent's expression didn't change. I'm offering you a way out, Serena. But more than that, I'm offering you a way forward. The question is whether you're smart enough to take it. Serena sat very still, her mind racing. This was a trap. It had to be. Vincent Castellano wasn't offering her salvation. He was offering her a different kind of cage. But he was also right. Damien would eventually decide she was more trouble than she was worth, and when that happened, she'd be erased. Unless she had protection Damien couldn't touch. I need time to think about it, she said. Vincent nodded like he'd expected that. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer expires. He stood, and his security moved with him. One more thing. Whoever you're working for now, Adrian Cross, I assume, they can't protect you from what's coming. Not really. Keep that in mind when you're making your decision. He walked out, leaving Serena alone in the empty restaurant with an espresso cup and a choice that felt like it had already been made for her. She sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, and wondered how many moves ahead these men were playing while she was still learning the rules. Serena walked out of Giordano's into afternoon light that felt too bright, too normal for what had just happened. Her hands were steady, but her mind wasn't. Vincent Castellano had just offered her exactly what she needed: protection, resources, a way to stop being Damien's disposable problem. All she had to do was betray the man who'd given her a chance when she had nothing. She made it 3 blocks before pulling out the burner phone and calling Adrian. He answered immediately. Are you all right? I'm fine. We need to meet. What happened? Not over the phone. Serena scanned the street, suddenly aware of how exposed she was. Same place as before, 30 minutes. She hung up before he could argue. The cafe was nearly empty when she arrived. Adrian was already there, positioned at their usual table, his expression carefully neutral. But Serena could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes tracked her movement across the room. She sat down and told him everything. Vincent's offer, the 24-hour deadline, the implicit threat beneath the polite conversation. Adrian listened without interrupting, his face giving nothing away. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. What did you tell him? He asked finally. That I needed time to think. And do you? Need time to think? Serena met his gaze. He knew I was working for you. He said your name, Adrian, which means either someone told him or he's been watching me closely enough to figure it out. Vincent's thorough. It's why he's survived this long. Adrian leaned back, his expression thoughtful. The question is whether his offer is genuine or whether he's testing you. Testing me how? By seeing if you'll betray me to save yourself. If you do, he learns you're untrustworthy. If you don't, he learns you have loyalty. Either way, he gets information. Adrian's eyes were steady on hers. So what are you going to do? I don't know. The admission felt like failure. A month ago, this would have been simple. I would have taken his offer, done whatever he wanted, because survival was all that mattered. But now you have options, and options complicate things. Is that what you are? An option? Adrian smiled faintly. I'm the person who gave you a choice when everyone else was telling you what to do. That's worth something, I think. Serena looked down at her hands, trying to organize thoughts that kept slipping away from her. Vincent said you can't protect me from what's coming. Is that true? Probably. Adrian's honesty was almost brutal. I have resources, connections, people who owe me favors. But Vincent Castellano has been building his empire for 30 years. If he decides you're a threat, I can slow him down. I can't stop him. Then why shouldn't I take his offer? Because Vincent doesn't give anything without taking something bigger in return. He'll protect you, yes, but he'll own you. Every piece of information you give him, every action you take on his behalf, it binds you tighter to his organization. Eventually, you won't be able to leave even if you want to. Adrian leaned forward. I won't lie and say working with me is safer. It's not. But at least you'll still be your own person. Serena absorbed that, felt the weight of it. What would you do if you were me? I'd ask myself what I actually want. Not survival. You're already surviving, not revenge. That's just another kind of cage. But what do you want your life to look like when this is over? Adrian's gaze was intense, focused. Answer that, and the decision becomes easier. I want to matter, Serena said quietly. I want to be someone who can't be thrown away. Someone who has power because of what they know and what they can do, not because of who they married or who they're useful to. She looked up at him. Is that possible? I don't know, but it won't happen if you let Vincent Castellano decide your future. The words settled between them like an anchor. Okay, Serena said. Then I need to find a way to refuse Vincent without making him kill me. How do I do that? Adrian's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but close. You give him something better than betrayal. You give him information he can't get anywhere else. Something valuable enough that he sees you as an asset instead of a liability. What kind of information? The kind only you can access. Adrian pulled out his tablet, brought up a file. The bug in Damien's office picked up something interesting yesterday. A meeting between Damien and his financial advisor. They were discussing offshore accounts, shell companies, money. Damien's been moving out of the country for the past 6 months. Serena leaned forward, studying the screen. Why would he do that? Because he's planning to disappear. If things get bad enough, if Vincent pushes hard enough, Damien has an exit strategy. New identity, new country, enough money to live very comfortably while his empire burns. Adrian looked up at her. That information is worth a fortune to Vincent. Proof that Damien's not as committed to this war as he pretends. Proof that he's already planning to run. You want me to give this to Vincent? I want you to trade it for something better than protection. I want you to make Vincent see you as someone with access to intelligence he needs. Someone he can't afford to kill because you might know something else useful down the line. Adrian closed the tablet. It's risky, but it buys you leverage, and leverage keeps you alive. Serena sat back, her mind already working through the angles. If I give Vincent this, Damien will know someone has access to his private conversations. He'll sweep for bugs. He'll find the one I planted. Probably. Which means we need to move fast. Get everything we can from that bug before Damien shuts it down. Adrian's expression was serious. Serena, this is the inflection point. After this, there's no going back to being invisible. You'll be a player. You'll be someone both Damien and Vincent are watching. Are you ready for that? She thought about the girl who'd stood in a penthouse 6 weeks ago, holding divorce papers, believing her life was over. That girl would have been terrified. That girl would have run. But that girl was gone. Yes, Serena said. I'm ready. Adrian nodded slowly. Then let's make sure Vincent Castellano understands exactly who he's dealing with. Serena called the number Vincent had given her at exactly noon the next day. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. Have you made your decision? I have. I'd like to meet again, same place, 1 hour. There was a pause. Bring proof of your value, Serena. I'm not interested in empty promises. The line went dead. Serena looked at the file Adrian had given her, printed documents detailing Damien's offshore accounts, shell companies, the architecture of his exit strategy. It was thorough, damning, exactly the kind of information that could destroy whatever remained of Damien's credibility. She put the file in her bag and headed for the North District. Vincent was waiting at the same table, the same security position throughout the empty restaurant. But this time, his daughter was with him. Elena Castellano sat to his right, wearing a tailored suit and an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. She was beautiful in a sharp, deliberate way. Dark hair, darker eyes, the kind of presence that commanded attention without asking for it. Serena had destroyed this woman's engagement. She'd been the reason Elena's future had collapsed. Elena's gaze when Serena approached was cold enough to frost glass. "Serena Voss," Vincent said. "My daughter wanted to meet the woman who took her place." "Briefly," Elena added, her voice clipped. "Very briefly." Serena sat down, set her bag on the floor, and met Elena's stare without flinching. "I didn't know about the engagement when I married Damien, if that matters." "It doesn't." Elena's smile was razor sharp. "But I appreciate the apology you're not actually giving." "Elena," Vincent said mildly, "we're here for business." "Of course." Elena leaned back but didn't stop watching Serena. "Please, continue. I'm fascinated to see what you think is valuable enough to bring to this meeting." Serena pulled out the file, set it on the table. "Damien Voss is planning to leave the country. He's been moving money offshore for months. Shell companies in the Caymans, accounts in Switzerland, enough to disappear and never look back. This file contains account numbers, transaction records, dates. Everything you need to prove he's not fighting this war to win. He's fighting it to buy time until he can run." Vincent picked up the file, opened it, scanned the first few pages. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest. Calculation. "How did you get this?" "Does it matter?" "It does if I'm going to trust the information." Serena had prepared for this question. "I have access to people in Damien's organization who don't like how he's handling things. People who think maybe he's not the leader they thought he was. They talk. I listen." It wasn't entirely a lie. The bug gave her access. The bug let her listen. She just wasn't mentioning the bug. Vincent studied her for a long moment, then looked at Elena. "What do you think?" "I think she's either very brave or very desperate." Elena's gaze hadn't left Serena's face. "But the information checks out. Those account numbers match patterns I've seen before. If she's fabricating this, she's doing it convincingly." "I'm not fabricating anything," Serena said quietly. "Damien is planning to abandon everyone who's loyal to him. Your people should know that. His people should know that. Because when this war ends, however it ends, Damien won't be here to face the consequences." Vincent closed the file, set it aside. "This is good intelligence. Useful. The kind of thing that changes how certain people will position themselves going forward." He tilted his head. "But it doesn't answer my original question. Will you work for me?" "No." The word hung in the air between them. Elena's eyebrows rose slightly. Vincent's expression remained neutral, but Serena could feel the temperature in the room drop. "No?" Vincent repeated. "I'll work with you. I'll provide information when I have it. I'll help you understand what Damien's planning. But I won't work for you. I won't become part of your organization. I won't trade one cage for another." Serena kept her voice steady. "I'm offering you a partnership. Intelligence in exchange for protection. But I stay independent." "Independent?" Vincent's smile was thin. "That's not how this world works, Serena." "Then maybe the world needs to work differently." She met his gaze. "You said I was smart enough to take your offer. I am. But I'm also smart enough to know that the moment I become your employee, I lose the only leverage I have. As long as I'm independent, I'm valuable. The second I belong to you, I'm just another asset you'll use until I'm not useful anymore." "And you think I'll accept that arrangement?" "I think you're practical. I think you'd rather have access to information than lose it because you insisted on ownership." Serena leaned forward slightly. "Damien underestimated me because he thought I was powerless. Don't make the same mistake." Silence. Elena was watching her father, her expression unreadable. Vincent's security hadn't moved, but Serena could feel their attention focused entirely on her. Finally, Vincent laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, more surprised than amused. "You have spine, I'll give you that." He stood, picked up the file. "All right, Serena Voss, we'll try it your way. Information in exchange for protection. You stay independent. But understand something. Independence means you're responsible for your own mistakes. I won't clean up your messes. I won't save you if you get caught. You live or die on your own merits." "I understand." "Good." Vincent gestured to one of his security team, who approached with a phone. "This is a direct line to me. Use it when you have something worth sharing. Don't use it for anything else." Serena took the phone, added it to her growing collection of burner devices. What happens now? Now I verify your information. If it's legitimate, and I suspect it is, people will start asking Damien very uncomfortable questions about his commitment to this fight. Vincent's smile was cold, and when they ask those questions, his organization will fracture a little more, piece by piece, exactly like I planned. He walked toward the exit, then paused and looked back. One more thing. Adrian Cross is a good strategist, but he's also deeply invested in bringing Damien down for personal reasons. Make sure his vendetta doesn't become your suicide mission. Then he was gone, his security following. Elena remained seated, still watching Serena with those dark, calculating eyes. "You destroyed my engagement," she said conversationally. "I know. I should hate you for that. Do you?" Elena considered the question. "I did. For about a week. Then I realized Damien Voss wasn't the man I thought he was. Wasn't the partner my father promised me. So maybe you did me a favor." She stood, smoothed her suit. "But make no mistake, I won't forget what you cost me. The humiliation, the questions, the way people looked at me after the alliance fell apart." "I'm sorry." "No, you're not. You're just sorry you got caught in the middle of it." Elena's smile was sharp, but not entirely unkind. "But I respect what you just did in there. My father doesn't give people independence. He takes it. The fact that you negotiated for it and got it, that's impressive. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You just made yourself interesting to some very dangerous people. Interesting doesn't usually end well." Elena walked past her toward the exit, then stopped. "If you survive the next month, call me. I might have work for someone with your particular talents." She left before Serena could respond. Serena sat alone in the empty restaurant, surrounded by the ghosts of conversations that had just changed her life, and tried to process what had happened. She'd refused Vincent Castellano. She'd negotiated terms with one of the most powerful men in the city. She'd made herself a player instead of a pawn, and she'd done it without Adrian's explicit approval. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "We need to talk. Now." Serena collected her things and headed for the door, her mind already preparing for the conversation she knew was coming. Adrian was pacing when she arrived at their meeting spot. A different cafe this time, farther from the center of the city. He stopped when he saw her, his expression tight. "What did you do?" Serena sat down, forced herself to appear calm. "I gave Vincent the information about Damien's offshore accounts. I offered to work with him, not for him. He accepted." "You went off script." "There was no script. You told me to give him information valuable enough to buy leverage. I did. I told you to trade it for protection, not independence." Adrian sat across from her, his frustration barely controlled. "Serena, Vincent Castellano doesn't do partnerships. He does ownership. The fact that he agreed to your terms means he's planning something you haven't anticipated. Or it means he sees value in having an independent source of intelligence who isn't compromised by loyalty to either side." Serena kept her voice level. "You said I needed to become someone both sides want to keep alive. That's what I did. By putting yourself in the middle of a war zone with no real protection. I have protection." Vincent agreed. "Vincent agreed to whatever keeps you useful. The second you stop being useful, his agreement means nothing." Adrian rubbed his face, looking suddenly tired. "I'm trying to help you survive this, but you have to trust me. You have to listen when I tell you something is dangerous." "I am listening, but I'm also making my own decisions." Serena leaned forward. "You've been honest with me from the beginning. You told me this was risky. You told me I'd be exposed. You told me to figure out what I actually wanted." "Well, I did. And what I want is to stop being someone other people make decisions for. Even if those decisions get you killed?" "Even then." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then he sighed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "You're not the same person I met in that alley." "No, I'm not. I'm not sure if that's good or bad yet." "Neither am I." Serena managed a faint smile. "But I'd rather die being myself than survive being someone else's tool." "That's very noble, also very stupid." But there was something like respect in Adrian's voice. "All right, you made your choice. Now we deal with the consequences." starting with the fact that Damien's going to know someone leaked his exit strategy. He'll tear his organization apart looking for the source. Let him. Maybe it'll distract him from everything else that's falling apart. Maybe. Or maybe it'll make him desperate enough to do something drastic. Adrian pulled out his tablet, brought up the audio feed from Damien's office. The bug's still active. We have maybe 48 hours before he sweeps for surveillance. We need to get everything we can before then. What are we listening for? Proof of what Damien's really planning. He told his lieutenants he's baiting Vincent, drawing him out. But if he's also planning to run, those two strategies contradict each other. Either he's lying to his people about his intentions, or he's lying to himself about his chances. Adrian looked up at her. Either way, the truth is in that office. We just need to find it. They spent the next 6 hours listening to recordings, piecing together fragments of conversation, building a timeline of Damien's decisions over the past 3 months. What emerged was a picture of a man caught between competing impulses, the need to appear strong, the desire to destroy Vincent Castellano, and the growing certainty that he couldn't win. The offshore accounts were insurance, but they were also admission of defeat. Late that night, as they were reviewing the final recording, Damien's voice came through clearly, talking to someone Serena didn't recognize. Can't hold the territories much longer. Vincent's people are everywhere. They're bribing my lieutenants, turning my suppliers, making it impossible to operate. A pause. I need the Castellano girl. Serena's blood went cold. What? Adrian held up a hand. Listen. Elena won't come willingly, the other voice said. Not after what you did. Then make her come unwillingly. I don't care how you do it, but I need leverage over Vincent, and she's the only thing he values more than power. Damien's voice was flat, certain. Bring me Elena Castellano. Alive. Within the week. The recording ended. Serena and Adrian stared at each other across the table. He's going to kidnap her, Serena said, her voice barely above a whisper. He's going to try. Adrian's expression was grim. This is the desperation I was worried about. Damien's out of options, so he's escalating. If he takes Elena, Vincent will come for him with everything he has. The whole city will burn. We have to warn her. We have to warn Vincent. He's the one with resources to protect her. Serena pulled out the phone Vincent had given her, stared at it. If I tell him this, he'll know for certain someone has access to Damien's private conversations. The bug will be compromised. The bug's already on borrowed time. Elena's life is worth more than another day of surveillance. Adrian's gaze was steady. Make the call, Serena. She dialed Vincent's number. He answered immediately. This is earlier than I expected. Damien's planning to kidnap your daughter. Within the week. He needs leverage against you, and Elena's the only thing he thinks will work. Silence on the other end. Then, how reliable is this information? Completely. I heard him give the order myself. To whom? I don't know. Someone he trusts enough to handle it. Serena's hand was shaking. Mr. Castellano, he's serious. You need to protect her. Elena can protect herself, but I appreciate the warning. Vincent's voice was cold, controlled, lethal. This changes things. Damien just made a mistake he won't survive. The line went dead. Serena set the phone down, her heart pounding. What happens now? Now Vincent moves to protect Elena. Damien realizes his plan is compromised, and everyone starts looking for the leak that warned the Castellanos. Adrian stood, began packing up the equipment. You need to disappear for a few days. Stay away from anywhere Damien's people might look. I'll get you a new place, somewhere safe. No! Adrian stopped. No? I'm not hiding. If I hide, I look guilty. If I look guilty, both Damien and Vincent will assume I'm the leak. Serena stood, her mind already working through the angles. I need to be visible. I need to be exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I've been doing. Let them search for the source. As long as I'm not acting suspicious, I'm just another person caught in the middle. That's incredibly risky. Everything about this is risky. At least this way, I'm controlling the narrative. Adrian studied her for a long moment, then shook his head with something that might have been admiration or might have been resignation. You really have changed, he said quietly. I had to. Serena picked up her bag, headed for the door. I'll check in tomorrow. Until then, keep monitoring the bug. If Damien says anything else, I need to know. Serena. She turned. Adrian's expression was serious, concerned. Be careful. You're playing a game with people who've been doing this for decades. One wrong move, I know, but I've been making wrong moves my entire life and surviving them. She managed a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Maybe it's time I started making the right ones. She left before he could argue. Outside, the city stretched before her, glittering and dangerous and full of people who wanted to use her or destroy her, or both. 3 months ago, that would have terrified her. Now it felt like possibility. Serena pulled out her phone, looked at the messages waiting, one from Vivian Drake asking if she was free for coffee, one from an unknown number that was probably Elena Castellano, one from the divorce lawyer reminding her the paperwork was almost finalized. Soon, she wouldn't be Serena Voss anymore. She'd just be Serena Vale again. Except she wasn't that person either. Not anymore. She was becoming someone new, someone dangerous, someone who mattered. And for the first time since Damien had handed her those divorce papers, Serena wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. The explosion happened 3 days later at a warehouse Damien controlled on the eastern edge of the city. Serena heard about it from the news first, a reporter standing in front of smoking rubble, talking about suspected gas leaks and ongoing investigations. But the text from Adrian that came 30 seconds later told a different story. Vincent's opening move. Damien will retaliate. Stay visible. Stay safe. Serena stood in her apartment watching the coverage and understood that the war she'd been observing from the margins had just become direct and brutal. The warehouse hadn't been empty. 3 of Damien's men were dead, 2 more in critical condition. The message was clear. Vincent Castellano was done with strategy. He was moving to annihilation. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Turn on channel 7. Elena Castellano's voice clipped and urgent. Serena changed the channel. A different reporter, same burning warehouse. But this angle showed something the other hadn't. Graffiti on the wall of the building next door, fresh and deliberate. 2 words in red paint. Voss burns. My father doesn't do subtlety when he's making a point, Elena said. He wanted Damien to know exactly who was responsible. He wanted everyone to know. Your father could have been killed in that kidnapping attempt? Could have been. Wasn't. We were ready. Elena's voice softened slightly. Because you warned us. My father doesn't forget debts, Serena. Neither do I. I didn't do it for debts. I did it because it was right. Then you're rare. Most people in this world only do what benefits them. A pause. There's going to be retaliation. Damien can't let this stand. You need to be prepared for what comes next. What comes next? Chaos. Violence. Damien desperate and cornered, which makes him more dangerous than he's ever been. Elena's tone turned serious. My father wants to meet with you. Tonight. He has a proposal. What kind of proposal? The kind that ends this war before the whole city burns. Are you in? Serena looked at her reflection in the darkened window, a woman she barely recognized, wearing clothes she'd bought with money from a man who'd discarded her, standing in an apartment that was supposed to be her cage. Everything had changed. She'd changed it. Where and when? I'll send a car. 1 hour. Don't bring anyone. Elena hung up. Serena immediately called Adrian. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with tension she could hear even through the phone. Did you see the news? I saw it. Elena just called. Vincent wants to meet tonight. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Damien's going to be looking for someone to blame for that warehouse, and you're the most obvious target. Which is exactly why I need to meet with Vincent. If I hide now, it confirms suspicion. If I go, I'm just someone caught in the crossfire trying to survive. Serena grabbed her jacket, checked her reflection again. Adrian, this is what we've been building toward. Vincent has a proposal. If it ends the war, we need to hear it. And if it's a trap? Then I'll deal with it. But I don't think it is. Elena wouldn't risk calling me directly unless her father actually needed something. Adrian was quiet for a moment. I don't like this. You don't have to like it. You just have to trust that I know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? Serena thought about that question. Really thought about it. A month ago, the answer would have been no. She'd been stumbling through a world she didn't understand, making decisions based on fear and desperation. But she'd learned, watched, adapted. She'd become someone who could sit across from Vincent Castellano and negotiate, someone who could plant surveillance devices and extract intelligence, someone who mattered. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I think I do." "All right. But Serena, call me when it's over. Let me know you're okay." "I will." She hung up, grabbed her things, and headed downstairs to wait for the car. The vehicle that arrived was sleek and black, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. The driver didn't speak when she got in, just pulled away from the curb and headed north toward Vincent's territory. They drove for 20 minutes, passing through neighborhoods that shifted from industrial to residential to something else entirely. The kind of area where old money lived behind gates and cameras, where everyone knew everyone and strangers were noticed immediately. The car pulled up to a house that looked like it had been standing for 100 years, all stone and iron and deliberate intimidation. The driver opened her door, gestured toward the entrance. Serena climbed the steps and knocked. Elena answered, wearing casual clothes that still looked expensive, her hair down for the first time since Serena had met her. She looked younger, less severe, almost approachable. "He's waiting in the study. Follow me." The house was beautiful in a cold, formal way. High ceilings, dark wood, art that belonged in museums. Elena led her through corridors that felt designed to make visitors feel small, then stopped at a heavy wooden door and knocked twice. "Come in." Vincent sat behind a desk that was probably older than Serena, surrounded by books and maps and what looked like land deeds from another century. He gestured to a chair across from him. "Sit. We have much to discuss and not much time." Serena sat. Elena remained standing by the door, arms crossed, watching. Vincent studied Serena for a moment, then said, "Damien Voss will retaliate for the warehouse. That's not speculation, it's certainty. The question is how, when, and whether we can control the fallout." "You started this," Serena pointed out. "You destroyed his property, killed his people. Why would you want to control the fallout now?" "Because I'm not interested in a war that destroys the entire city. I'm interested in removing Damien permanently while keeping the infrastructure intact." Vincent leaned back. The warehouse was a message, but it was also bait. "I'm forcing Damien to respond in a way that will expose him completely." "Expose him how?" "By making him desperate enough to commit an act so public, so undeniable, that even his own people will turn on him." Vincent's expression was cold, calculating. "Damien's been losing control for months. His organization is fracturing. His people are questioning his leadership. All I need to do is push him past the breaking point, and he'll destroy himself." "And where do I fit into this?" "You're going to help me push." Vincent pulled out a file, slid it across the desk. "This contains evidence of every illegal transaction, every violent act, every betrayal Damien's committed in the past 5 years. Alone, it's damning, but it's not enough to bring him down. Too much can be explained away, attributed to subordinates, buried in legal maneuvering." Serena opened the file, scanned the contents. Financial records, photographs, witness statements. It was comprehensive, brutal, exactly the kind of documentation that could end a criminal empire. "But if this evidence comes from someone inside his organization," Vincent continued, "someone with intimate knowledge of his operations, someone like his ex-wife who was discarded and has every reason to want revenge, then it becomes impossible to dismiss." "You want me to testify against him?" "I want you to present this to the council that governs the families in this city, the same council that sanctioned Damien's rise, that turned a blind eye to his methods because he was effective. If you stand in front of them and detail his crimes, using evidence they can't ignore, they'll have no choice but to remove him." Serena looked up from the file. "They'll kill me. The moment I testify, Damien will send everyone he has left to make sure I don't survive the night. Which is why my people will protect you. Before, during, and after. You'll have security, resources, everything you need to stay alive long enough for the council to act." Vincent's gaze was steady. "I won't lie to you. It's dangerous. But it's also the fastest way to end this. One testimony, one night, and Damien Voss becomes a problem the council solves for us." "Why me? Why not present this evidence yourself?" "Because I'm his enemy. Anything I say will be dismissed as bias, as vendetta, as one criminal trying to destroy another. But you? Vincent smiled faintly. You're the innocent victim, the woman he used and discarded. Your testimony carries moral weight mine never could. Serena closed the file, her mind racing. This was the endgame. Everything she'd been building toward, all the risks she'd taken, had led to this moment. She could stand in front of the council and destroy Damien completely. She could make him pay for every humiliation, every dismissal, every moment he'd treated her like she was nothing. But it would also make her visible in a way she couldn't take back. The discarded wife testifying against her ex-husband, that was a story people would remember. That was a role that would define her forever. What happens after, she asked. After I testify and the council removes Damien, what happens to me? You disappear. New identity, new city, enough money to start over somewhere Damien's reach can't extend. Vincent's expression was unreadable. Or, if you prefer, you stay. Work with my organization in an official capacity. Use the skills you've developed, the intelligence you've proven you possess. Become someone important. Important to you. Important to yourself. Isn't that what you wanted? Serena looked at Elena, who'd been silent through the entire conversation. What do you think? Elena pushed off from the door, moved closer. I think my father's offering you a chance very few people get, to take control of your own narrative. To be the one who ends Damien Voss instead of the woman he destroyed. She paused. But I also think you need to decide what you're willing to sacrifice for that chance. Because once you testify, there's no going back to being invisible. You'll be a known quantity, a public figure, someone people either respect or want dead. Those are my options: respect or death. In this world? Yes. Elena's smile was sharp. Welcome to the life you chose. Serena stood, walked to the window, looked out at Vincent's carefully maintained grounds. Gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most people earned in a year. Walls high enough to keep the world out. The illusion of safety built on violence and control. She thought about Adrian, who'd given her a choice when everyone else was giving her orders. She thought about the apartment with its peeling paint, the warehouse where she'd first stepped into danger, the office where she'd planted a bug that had started all of this. She thought about the girl in the wedding dress, holding divorce papers, believing her life was over. That girl was gone. She'd been gone for weeks. The woman standing here had choices. Real ones. I'll do it, Serena said, turning back to Vincent. I'll testify, but on one condition. Name it. Adrian Cross gets immunity, full protection. Whatever happens after I testify, he doesn't get caught in the fallout. He helped me survive when no one else would. I won't let him pay for that. Vincent considered her for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. Adrian Cross gets immunity and protection. You have my word. When does this happen? 3 days. The council meets at the old courthouse downtown. You'll present your testimony, I'll present supporting evidence, and the council will vote. Also, Vincent stood, extended his hand. After that, Damien Voss stops being our problem. Serena shook his hand, felt the weight of the agreement settle into her bones. She'd just committed to destroying the man who destroyed her first. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like stepping off a cliff and hoping someone had built a net. The next morning, Serena met Adrian at yet another cafe. They'd gone through so many locations she was losing track. He was already there when she arrived, coffee untouched, expression tense. She told him everything: Vincent's plan, the testimony, the 3-day timeline. Adrian listened without interrupting, his face growing darker with each detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. This is insane, he said finally. Probably. You'll be completely exposed. Every enemy Damien has, every person who's ever been loyal to him, they'll come for you. Vincent's providing protection. Vincent's providing what benefits Vincent. The moment you're not useful, I know, but Adrian, this ends it. No more surveillance, no more gathering intelligence, no more waiting for Damien to decide whether I'm worth erasing. I testify, the council removes him, and it's over. Or you testify, something goes wrong, and you're dead before the council even votes. Adrian's voice was sharp, frustrated. Serena, I've been trying to keep you alive. This plan puts you directly in the line of fire. I've been in the line of fire since Damien married me. At least now I'm shooting back. Adrian rubbed his face, looking exhausted. You've made up your mind. I have. But I need you to know, Vincent's giving you immunity, protection. Whatever happens, you're covered. I don't want immunity. I want you safe. The words hung between them, weighted with something neither of them had acknowledged before. Serena felt her chest tighten. I know you do, she said quietly. And you've kept me safe this whole time. You gave me tools, intelligence, a chance to become someone other than Damien's victim. But this is my choice, Adrian, my decision, and I need you to respect that. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, and Serena saw something shift in his expression. Resignation, maybe, or acceptance. All right, he said, then let's make sure you survive it. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Adrian drilled her on potential questions the council might ask, helped her organize the evidence into a narrative that was clear and damning, coached her on how to present herself, confident but not arrogant, victimized but not weak, honest without revealing too much. Serena practiced until the words felt natural, until she could recite Damien's crimes without her voice shaking, until she could look at photographs of violence and bloodshed without flinching. On the third day, Adrian walked her through the security plan Vincent had provided. She'd arrive at the courthouse with Vincent's people, enter through a side entrance, testify in a closed session with only the council present, then be escorted immediately to a safe house until the council voted. Simple. Direct. Dozens of ways it could go wrong. That evening, 6 hours before the testimony, Serena stood in her apartment and tried to decide what to wear. Something professional. Something that made her look credible. She settled on a dark suit she'd bought with the last of her settlement money. Simple jewelry, minimal makeup. She looked like someone who belonged in a courtroom. Someone who should be taken seriously. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know what you're planning. We need to talk. D. Serena stared at the message, her blood running cold. Damien. He knew. Somehow, he knew. A second message appeared. Meet me at the penthouse. 1 hour. Come alone or I go public with everything I know about you and Adrian Cross. Serena's hands shook as she read it again. This was a trap. It had to be. Damien was desperate, cornered, exactly as Vincent had predicted. He was trying to stop her testimony before it happened. She should ignore it, should call Vincent, call Adrian, let them handle it. But if Damien went public about Adrian, about the intelligence gathering, about everything they'd done, it would compromise not just the testimony, but Adrian's entire operation. It would destroy the protection Vincent had promised. She had 1 hour to decide. Serena grabbed her phone and called Adrian. He answered immediately. What's wrong? Damien knows. He wants to meet. Says he'll expose everything if I don't show up. It's a trap? I know, but if he exposes you, then he exposes me. Serena, you cannot go to that meeting. He'll kill you. He's desperate enough now that he doesn't care about the consequences. What if I wear a wire? What if I get him to confess something we can use? You're not trained for that. You're not equipped for that. This is exactly the kind of mistake that gets people killed. Serena looked at her reflection one more time. The woman staring back wasn't the girl who'd married Damien Voss. Wasn't even the woman who'd planted a surveillance device in his office 6 weeks ago. She was someone else entirely. Someone who understood that sometimes the only way through was forward. I'm going, she said. Serena, if I don't, he wins. He stops the testimony. He exposes our operation, and everything we've built falls apart. But if I go, if I can get him to say something incriminating, something the council can't ignore, maybe we end this tonight instead of tomorrow. Or maybe you don't survive the night. Then I don't. But at least I tried. Serena grabbed her jacket, headed for the door. I'll keep my phone on. If anything goes wrong, you'll know. Serena, please. She hung up before he could finish. The penthouse looked exactly as it had on her wedding night. Expensive, cold, perfect in its emptiness. Serena rode the elevator to the 40th floor, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear the soft classical music playing through the speakers. The doors opened. Damien stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, exactly where he'd been when he'd handed her divorce papers and destroyed her life. He didn't turn when she entered. You came, he said. You threatened Adrian. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices, Serena. You've made quite a few lately. Damien finally turned to face her. He looked different, tired, older, the careful control slipping. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The questions you've been asking, the places you've been showing up, the way information keeps leaking from my organization straight to my enemies? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult both of us by lying. Damien moved away from the windows, closer to her. I know about the bug in my office. I know about your arrangement with Adrian Cross. I know Vincent Castellano has been using you to gather intelligence. He stopped a few feet away. What I don't know is why. Why betray me? What did I do to make you hate me this much? Serena almost laughed. What did you do? You married me to destroy an alliance, divorced me 6 hours later, and threw me away like I was nothing. You turned my life into a strategy and didn't even have the decency to tell me why. I protected you. You used me. I did both. Damien's expression was hard. You want to know the truth? Fine. Vincent Castellano's daughter was poison. The alliance he was offering was a trap designed to absorb my organization into his. I would have become a subordinate in my own empire, and Elena would have been the knife Vincent used to control me. So yes, I married you instead. I used you to escape a cage I couldn't escape any other way. And after you'd sabotaged the alliance? Why keep me around? Because I wasn't sure if Vincent would retaliate. I thought if I kept you close, if I monitored you, I could make sure he didn't use you against me the way he'd planned to use his daughter. Damien's laugh was bitter. Instead, I gave you time to become exactly what I was afraid of. Someone with access, intelligence, and motivation to destroy me. You gave me no choice. I gave you a settlement and a safe exit. You chose to stay. You chose to work with Adrian Cross. You chose to become a player in a game you don't fully understand. Damien's eyes were cold. And now you're planning to testify against me tomorrow. To stand in front of the council and destroy everything I've built. Serena's breath caught. How do you know about that? Because I still have people loyal to me. People who tell me things. People who understand that Vincent Castellano is a bigger threat to this city than I've ever been. Damien pulled something from his pocket, a small recording device. I'm going to give you a choice, Serena. The same choice I should have given you 3 months ago. What choice? Walk away. Don't testify. Take the settlement I originally offered and leave the city tonight. If you do, I'll let Adrian Cross live. I'll forget about the surveillance, the intelligence gathering, all of it. Damien's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Or you testify tomorrow and I make sure everyone you care about pays the price. Adrian, Vincent, even Elena Castellano. I'll burn this entire city to ash before I let them take me down. You're bluffing. Am I? Damien pressed a button on the device. A voice came through. Adrian's voice, talking to someone about the testimony, about the evidence, about how they'd finally destroy Damien. I have recordings of everything, every conversation, every plan, every law you and Adrian broke gathering your evidence. If I release these, the council won't remove me. They'll remove both of you, and you'll spend the rest of your life in prison or dead. Serena felt the world tilt. He had them. All the work, all the risks, all the intelligence they'd gathered. Damien had been one step ahead the entire time. So what's it going to be? Damien asked. Save yourself and the people you care about? Or die trying to be someone you were never meant to be? Serena looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the powerful crime lord who'd walked into her life and destroyed it, but a man backed into a corner, desperate and afraid, using the only weapons he had left. And she realized something crucial. He was bluffing. Not about the recordings, those were probably real, but about releasing them. Because if Damien exposed Adrian, he exposed the fact that his organization had been compromised for months. He exposed his own weakness. He gave the council proof that he'd lost control. He needed her to walk away. Needed the testimony to never happen, because without it, he still had a chance. With it, he was finished. No, Serena said quietly. Damien's expression darkened. No? I'm not walking away. I'm not leaving the city. And tomorrow I'm going to stand in front of that council and tell them everything you've done. Every crime, every betrayal, every person you've hurt or killed or discarded. Serena's voice was steady, certain. You can release those recordings if you want. But the moment you do, you admit you've been compromised. You admit you're weak, and this council doesn't tolerate weakness. You'll go to prison. Maybe, but you'll be dead. And honestly, that's worth it. For the first time since she'd met him, Serena saw fear in Damien's eyes. Real fear. You've changed, he said softly. You made me change. You threw me into a world that was supposed to erase me, and instead it taught me how to survive, how to fight, how to become someone who can't be thrown away. Serena stepped closer. You were right about one thing. I was never meant to be someone important, but I became important anyway, despite you, because of you. Damien was silent for a long moment. Then he set the recording device on the table between them. I could kill you right now. End this before it starts. You could try, but Vincent has people watching this building. Adrian knows where I am. If I don't walk out of here in the next 10 minutes, they'll come for you. And you're not ready for that fight. Not yet. You're so certain. I'm certain enough. They stared at each other across the space that separated them. The powerful crime lord and the discarded wife who'd refused to stay discarded. For a moment, Serena thought Damien might actually do it, might decide that killing her was worth whatever consequences followed. Then he smiled, cold, defeated, empty. You win, Serena. You actually win. He turned back to the windows. I'll see you at the council meeting. Let's see if you survive the aftermath. Serena left without another word, rode the elevator down to the lobby, walked out into the night air that felt sharp and clean and real. Her legs were shaking, her hands wouldn't stay still. But she'd done it. She'd faced Damien Voss and refused to back down. She called Adrian the moment she reached the street. I'm okay. I'm out. What happened? I'll tell you later. But Adrian, he knows everything. The testimony, the plan, all of it. He threatened to release recordings that incriminate both of us. Did he? No, because he's bluffing. He needs me to walk away, and I didn't. Serena leaned against a building, tried to catch her breath. Tomorrow happens, no matter what. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The council meeting was set for 8 p.m. in a courthouse that looked like it belonged to another era. All marble columns and vaulted ceilings, and the weight of history pressing down on everyone who entered. Serena arrived with Vincent's security at 7:30, was escorted through side corridors to a small room where she'd wait until called. Elena was there, sitting in one of the chairs, wearing a suit that probably cost more than a car. Nervous? She asked. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Elena stood, walked to the window. My father's presenting the evidence first, laying out Damien's crimes in detail, the violence, the corruption, the territories he's stolen, the alliances he's broken. Then you testify. Tell your story. Make it personal. Make them see Damien as someone who destroys people, not just someone who bends rules. What if they don't believe me? They'll believe you, because every word you're saying is true, and truth has a weight lies don't. Elena turned to face her. Serena, when you walk into that room, you're not the discarded wife anymore. You're the woman who survived being discarded. That's power. Use it. A knock at the door. One of Vincent's security team. They're ready for you. Serena stood, smoothed her suit, and followed the man down a corridor that felt too long. At the end was a set of double doors, heavy wood, imposing. He pushed them open. The council chamber was smaller than she'd expected. A long table where 7 people sat. Men and women who looked like they belonged in boardrooms or courtrooms, not criminal enterprises. But Serena had learned enough to know that appearances meant nothing. These were the people who controlled the city's underworld. These were the people who decided who lived and who died. Damien sat at a separate table to the left, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked expensive and uncomfortable. His expression when he saw Serena was unreadable. Vincent sat opposite him, alone, confident. He nodded to Serena as she entered. Serena Vale, the council leader said, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. You've been called to testify regarding the conduct of Damien Voss. Do you swear to tell the truth? I do. Then begin. Serena took a breath, looked at the 7 faces watching her, and started talking. She told them about the wedding, the divorce papers already signed, the 6 hours of marriage that had destroyed an alliance and humiliated the Castellano family. She told them about being hidden in a building Damien controlled, about being monitored and threatened, and treated like disposable property. She told them about the surveillance she'd conducted, the conversations she'd heard, the evidence of Damien planning to flee the country while his organization burned. She made it personal, made them see her as a human being instead of a strategy, made them understand that Damien Voss didn't just break rules. He broke people. And through it all, Damien sat silent, his lawyers occasionally objecting but never successfully, his expression growing darker with each word. When Serena finished, the council leader looked at Damien. "Do you wish to respond?" Damien stood slowly. He looked at Serena first, and something passed between them. Not understanding, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. "Everything she said is true," he said quietly. "I married her to sabotage an alliance. I divorced her to cover my tracks. I kept her close to monitor her. I planned an exit strategy because I knew my organization was failing." He turned to the council. "But I did it all to survive, to protect what I'd built. Vincent Castellano was trying to absorb my operations. Elena was supposed to be a Trojan horse. I made a choice to fight back." "By using an innocent woman as a weapon?" the council leader asked. "By using whatever tools I had." Damien's voice was flat. "I don't apologize for that. I did what I thought was necessary." "And the violence? The territories you've taken through force? The alliances you've broken?" "All necessary, all strategic, all within the bounds of what this council has allowed for decades." Damien gestured to Vincent. "He's no different. He's just better at hiding it." Vincent stood. "The difference is that my people trust me. Damien's people are abandoning him. The evidence proves it. His organization is collapsing not because I'm destroying it, but because he destroyed it himself through arrogance and poor judgment." The council conferred quietly among themselves. Serena stood frozen, watching, waiting. This was it, the moment everything had been building toward. Finally, the council leader looked up. "We've heard enough. Damien Voss, this council finds you in violation of multiple agreements, including the sanctity of alliance negotiations, the protection of neutral parties, and the stability of territorial operations. Effective immediately, you are removed from all positions of authority. Your assets will be distributed among the remaining families. You have 48 hours to leave the city. If you return, the consequences will be permanent." Silence. Damien's face remained expressionless, but Serena saw his hands tighten on the table. "Understood," he said finally. "This council is adjourned." The 7 members stood and filed out. Vincent's security immediately moved to position themselves between Damien and Serena. But Damien didn't approach. He just looked at her one last time, nodded slightly, and walked out with his lawyers trailing behind him. Serena stood in the empty council chamber, her legs suddenly weak, and realized it was over. Damien Voss was finished. She'd won. Outside, Vincent was waiting with Elena. The night air was cold, sharp, exactly what Serena needed to clear her head. "You did well," Vincent said. "Better than I expected." "Thank you." The council's decision stands. Damien's out. His territories will be redistributed, his operations absorbed. By tomorrow morning, he'll be nobody. Vincent's expression was satisfied. "And you'll be the woman who made it happen. What happens to me now?" "That depends. Do you want to disappear, or do you want to stay and build something?" Serena looked at Elena, who was watching her with an expression that might have been respect or might have been calculation. "I want to stay," Serena said. "But on my terms. No cages, no ownership. I work with you, not for you." Vincent smiled. "We'll negotiate the details. But yes, I think we can agree to those terms." He walked away, leaving Serena alone with Elena. "You surprised me tonight," Elena said. "I didn't think you had it in you to stand in front of the council and destroy someone." "Neither did I, but it turns out I'm capable of a lot of things I didn't expect." "Welcome to the world, Serena, the real one." Elena extended her hand. "If you need anything, allies, resources, advice, call me. I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot of each other." They shook hands, and Elena walked to her car, leaving Serena standing alone on the courthouse steps. Adrian appeared from the shadows a moment later, moving carefully, like he wasn't sure if he should approach. Serena saw him and felt something in her chest loosen. "You're alive," he said. "I'm alive." And Damien's finished. He's finished. Adrian closed the distance between them, and for the first time since they'd met in that alley, he pulled her into a hug. It was brief, awkward, but genuine. "I thought I was going to lose you tonight," he said quietly. "When you went to meet Damien, when you walked into that council chamber, I thought this was the end. It almost was, but I'm still here. You're more than here. You're extraordinary." Adrian pulled back, looked at her seriously. "What you did tonight, that took courage I'm not sure I have. You stood in front of people who could have killed you and told them the truth. That's not something most people can do. I learned from you. You taught me how to survive, how to fight, how to be someone other than a victim. You taught yourself that. I just gave you tools." Adrian's smile was genuine. "What happens now? Vincent's offering you a place in his organization?" "He is, but I'm not sure I want it." Serena looked out at the city, lights glittering in the darkness. "I spent 3 months learning how to operate in this world, but I'm not sure I want to stay in it." "What do you want?" "I don't know yet, but for the first time in my life, I get to figure that out on my own terms. No one else deciding for me. No one else using me for their plans." She looked back at Adrian. "That's worth more than power or money or belonging to an organization." "It is." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "If you decide you want help, figuring things out, building something new, I'm here. Not as your handler, not as someone trying to use you, just as someone who believes you're capable of anything you choose to do." Serena felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back, refused to let them fall. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. Thank you for trusting me. Even when it was dangerous, even when it would have been easier to run." They stood together on the courthouse steps as the city moved around them, and Serena thought about the woman she'd been when this started. Scared, disposable, convinced her life was over. That woman was gone, buried under 3 months of survival and transformation and becoming someone new. The woman standing here now had destroyed a criminal empire, negotiated with dangerous men, and refused to be erased. She had options, allies, power she'd earned through intelligence and nerve, and sheer stubborn refusal to disappear. She didn't know what came next, but for the first time that felt like possibility instead of fear. 2 weeks later, Serena stood in an apartment she'd chosen herself. Not one assigned to her, not one controlled by someone else, but a space that was genuinely hers. It was small, nothing fancy, but it had windows that let in real light and doors she could lock from the inside. The divorce papers had been finalized. She was Serena Vale again. Just Serena. No one's wife, no one's mistake, no one's weapon. Her phone rang. "Elena Castellano. There's a position opening up in my father's organization, someone to handle intelligence, coordinate information flow, manage external relations. It's yours if you want it." "What would it involve?" "Everything you're already good at. Watching, listening, understanding how people operate, but with resources, protection, and enough authority that people take you seriously." Elena paused. "You'd be working with me. I could use someone I trust who isn't afraid to tell me the truth." Serena looked out her window at the city that had tried to break her and failed. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But Serena, you've earned this. You've proven yourself. Don't hide from that." The line went quiet. Serena set the phone down and thought about choices. About the life she could build working with Elena, becoming someone important in an organization that controlled half the city. About the alternative, walking away completely, starting over somewhere new, leaving this world behind. Both options were real. Both were possible. And that, more than anything else, was the victory. She'd started this journey as someone who'd lost everything and believed she had no future. She'd been used, discarded, erased. But she'd refused to stay erased. She'd fought her way back to visibility, to power, to mattering. She'd destroyed the man who thought she was nothing. She'd built alliances with people who respected her intelligence and nerve. She'd become someone who couldn't be thrown away. And now, standing in her own apartment with real choices in front of her, Serena understood what she'd been fighting for all along. Not revenge, not survival, not even power. Freedom. The freedom to decide who she was and who she wanted to be. The freedom to build a life on her own terms. The freedom to matter because of what she chose, not because of what someone else did to her. She picked up her phone and called Adrian. "I need your advice," she said when he answered. "About Elena's offer?" "About everything. About what comes next." Serena smiled. "And I was hoping maybe we could talk about it over dinner, not as handler and asset, not as strategist and operative, just as two people who survived something difficult and came out the other side." There was a pause. Then Adrian said, "I'd like that. Tonight?" "Tonight." They made plans, and Serena hung up feeling lighter than she had in months. The city stretched beyond her window, full of possibility and danger and opportunity. Damien Voss was gone, exiled to whatever life he'd built with his offshore money. Vincent Castellano controlled more territory than ever. Elena was building her own empire within her father's shadow, and Serena was here, in the middle of it all, trying to decide what kind of life she wanted. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined when she'd married Damien. It wasn't the happy ending where everything worked out perfectly. But it was real. It was hers. And it was enough. Serena Vale had been discarded, dismissed, underestimated, and nearly erased. But she'd refused to disappear. She'd learned to fight, to strategize, to become someone formidable. And now, standing in her own apartment on an ordinary Tuesday evening with real choices and real freedom, she finally understood the most important truth of all. She'd never needed Damien Voss to save her. She'd saved herself. And that was the only ending that mattered.